Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Josh and this is your stimulus check update for Friday, June 26th. I hope everyone is having a great week so far. In this video, we'll be discussing both the first and second stimulus checks, as well as the new stimulus tax credit bill being introduced. I'll also be touching base on the $1,000 EIDL grant, and then I'll be wrapping up this video by answering some of the comments and questions that I received in my previous video. But first, if you wouldn't mind real quickly liking this video, giving me a big thumbs up, it really just helps with the YouTube algorithm in terms of pushing this video out to other viewers like you and hopefully helping other people like you. In addition to that, leave a comment in the comment section below letting me know whether or not you received your first stimulus payment yet or not. Believe it or not, there are still millions of people that have unfortunately still not received their first stimulus payment. So let me know in the comment section below whether or not you received that first stimulus check or not. Okay, so if you live in or around the Las Vegas area, or maybe you just want to go on a vacation during a pandemic, one of the many things that you should definitely know is that you can actually get paid if you wear a mask inside one of the Caesars Entertainment casinos. That's right, a promotion team has actually been walking around looking for mask wearers, and whenever they find one, they'll actually slip them a $20 bill. Now, of course, most likely those $20 end up getting gambled away anyways, but still, it's a pretty cool idea on their part. And also, it works as a pretty good incentive to get people to wear masks without causing any type of political uproar. All right, moving right along to the first stimulus checks. Unfortunately, at the moment, like I did mention, there are still millions of people waiting for their first stimulus payments, which I find to be incredibly ridiculous. Now, if you haven't yet received your first stimulus payment, in most cases, no action actually needs to be taken. In the meantime, all you have to do is just continue checking the payment portal and you will eventually receive a date. And yeah, I know the payment portal has been a complete headache and most likely hasn't been working for you. But remember, if you do keep receiving the message of payment status not available, all that means is that the IRS has not yet scheduled a delivery date for you, so it does not mean that you're not eligible for the stimulus check. One other option that you do have is to actually call the IRS EIP hotline, and that number is 1-800-919-9835. Now, I will say that you most likely will be on hold for at least a couple of hours, so I would recommend to call earlier in the day. Also, from a lot of the comments that I have read, whenever people do call the IRS hotline, they don't actually end up learning a whole lot of new information. So unless you have a couple of hours to blow and you won't get too frustrated, I wouldn't really recommend calling that phone number. And remember, if you did not file a tax return within the past 2 years, or you didn't start receiving Social Security benefits until the year of 2020, then you should fill out the non-filers tool in order to be eligible for your stimulus payment. Also, you should make sure that you're not being claimed as a dependent on anyone else's tax returns, as that could also make you ineligible for a stimulus payment. Now, if you're not being claimed as a dependent on anyone else's tax return, and you don't have something like past due child support that could potentially offset your stimulus payment, then you should definitely be eligible and you should definitely receive a date. So hang in there, your check should not take too much longer to arrive. The next wave of checks are set to go out next Wednesday, July 1st. So if you haven't yet already, go ahead and check the payment portal today and let me know in the comment section below if you're also receiving a payment date of Wednesday, July 1st. All right, let's talk about the second stimulus check. So as you all know by now, at least on the surface, President Trump really seems to want a second stimulus check. Even though he did say that the second stimulus package would be very generous, not stimulus check, he has mentioned on other occasions that he would be behind a second stimulus check. And we also know that the House majority Democrats want a second stimulus check as well. After all, a $1,200 stimulus check was in their HEROES Act, in which they passed back in May. The HEROES Act not only included $1,200 stimulus payments to Americans, but it also included $1,200 stimulus payments to dependents who are left out in the CARES Act. So if we're talking about adults over the age of 17, like college students, or just adults who were claimed by their children or some other person on their tax return as a dependent. So really at this point, the only hang up on receiving an additional stimulus check would be the Senate majority Republicans. They're really the only people that we're looking at this point. Without them on board, a second stimulus check simply will not pass, even if Donald Trump is fully for a second stimulus check. Now, unfortunately, some of them still strongly oppose a second stimulus check, calling them fiscally irresponsible and wildly inefficient. Senator Toomey, for example, is one of those who oppose a second stimulus check. His logic is, well, if you didn't actually lose your job during the pandemic, then your income wasn't affected. Therefore, you shouldn't be receiving a stimulus check. And whether you agree with those sentiments or not, one of his comments did strike a little bit of a nerve with me. This is when Senator Toomey actually mentioned that Social Security recipients should not receive stimulus checks because whenever the pandemic took place, they did not lose their income because Social Security was still paying out their full benefits. Therefore, he said, since Social Security recipients did not actually lose their income, then they should not have received a stimulus check. And while that may be true, Social Security recipients definitely still did receive their full benefits, he's really not seeing the entire picture here. Many Social Security recipients aren't solely relying on their benefits to get by in life. Many Social Security recipients also have a job, and most likely their job was probably impacted by the pandemic as well. So really, I couldn't disagree more with Senator Toomey's comments on that. Social Security recipients were by far deserving of stimulus checks, and if there are any additional stimulus payments going out, then they should also be eligible for the next stimulus checks as well. Those are my thoughts on that. So even with President Donald Trump and the House Democrats on board with a second stimulus check, it may be a little bit more of a tougher sell to the Senate Republicans. So with that said, if you do want to try making a difference, you can always contact your state senator at 202-224-3121, and you can just let them know what receiving a second stimulus check would mean for you. No matter how small of a difference you think you can make, every little bit of action does add up. In the end, however, it is my opinion that we will definitely receive a second stimulus check, probably sometime either in late August or early September. I do believe that we'll get just enough senators on board with a second stimulus check where we can get a bipartisan bill created and passed sometime in early August, which means stimulus checks should start going out either in late August or early September. And remember, the House Democrats have already made it very clear that no bill is actually going to pass unless it includes additional stimulus payments to the Americans. So if the Senate-controlled Republicans do want to pass another stimulus bill and target areas in which they think would be best, such as businesses, they would have to include additional stimulus payments to the Americans in order for the House-controlled Democrats to pass the bill. But let's hang in there and wait and see. I do believe that we have a lot to be optimistic about here. Okay, so I have mentioned before on this channel about the $4,000 travel tax credit that Trump wants to be in the next stimulus package. And while some people love it and most people hate it because, let's face it, who actually has the money to be traveling during a pandemic? Either way, Senator Martha McSally did introduce a new bill called the TRIP Act, which is essentially what Trump was calling for. In this bill, each adult would be receiving $4,000 in tax credits each year through the year of 2021. This bill would be retroactive from January 1st of 2020, so we could receive up to $8,000 in tax credits for the next 2 years. But of course, in order to be eligible for these tax credits, you would have to be at least 50 miles away from your home, and you would also have to be within the US borders. So while I thought initially, hey, at least we can save some money come tax time by getting takeout on occasion from our local favorite restaurants. Well, now, no, actually you would need to be at least 50 miles away from your home to be eligible for this tax credit. The expenses you would be eligible to write off as tax credits would include things such as food and beverages, lodging, transportation, and live entertainment events. Now, in the $4,000 Explore America tax credit that Trump initially suggested, we would only be able to write off up to 50% of our expenses as tax credits. Now, in this bill, at least seemingly right now, we would be able to write off 100% of those expenses, which would in fact be a lot more generous. Either way, I don't feel that a bill like this is necessarily targeting the correct people because most people don't necessarily have the money to be traveling during a pandemic. For the most part, I believe this bill is more so targeting the hard-hit travel industries. Now, with all that said, if you do have a little bit of money to invest at the moment, it may not be a bad idea to put some of your money into the travel industries, as if a bill like this were to pass, it could potentially encourage people to travel, which could help boost up those stocks. Either way, with all that said, this is just another bill, and just because a bill is introduced doesn't necessarily mean that it'll actually end up becoming a law. I'd actually say the true likelihood of this bill passing and becoming a law is pretty slim. However, I do believe that we'll end up seeing some type of vacation tax credit in the next stimulus package. Perhaps something like the Explore America tax credit that President Donald Trump has suggested. In the end, I would definitely be fine with that just as long as it doesn't end up replacing additional stimulus payments. In fact, 2/3 of surveyed Americans are actually on board with some type of vacation tax credit. However, we should not be having a debate over a vacation tax credit or an additional stimulus payment. If you want to do a stimulus check and a vacation credit, fine. But let's not try to debate over the two because, let's face it, an additional stimulus payment is of much greater importance right now. Okay, moving right along to the $1,000 EIDL grant. Again, I just wanted to bring this grant up again just because of its overall importance. I've seen a lot of comments in the comment section asking if their particular business or side hustle would be eligible, because to them their side hustle might seem very small and they may think that they're not eligible for this grant. But I will say, no matter how insignificant you think you are, no matter how small of a side hustle you think you may have, just apply for the grant. You have absolutely nothing to lose. If you have any doubts whatsoever whether you would be eligible for this grant, then just apply. Now, this $1,000 grant would be considered income, so it would be taxable. However, the whole point of this grant is to use it on supplies or other things that the pandemic prevented you from purchasing. So, for example, if you had a loss of revenue because of the pandemic and you had planned on buying a new printer for your business, and since you had a loss of revenue, you were no longer able to buy the printer, well, guess what? Now that you have $1,000, you can use that $1,000 grant to buy your new printer for your business. Another example here, let's say that you drive Uber and you need hand sanitizer or other cleaning supplies. You could use that $1,000 to kind of boost up your Uber business, for example. And again, these funds are going to be running out very quickly, so I would suggest that you go on there right now and apply as quickly as possible. I have been very excited to see many comments from people saying that they applied and they received their grant just a few days later. So again, guys, these funds are running out very quickly, so apply today if you do have any type of side hustle, and I will leave a link in the description box below where you can apply for the grant. Alright, so at this point, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video by answering some of the comments and questions that I received in my previous video. And if you have any other comments or questions for me, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. I do try to respond to as many comments and questions as I possibly can. And those comments and questions that I'm not able to get to, I do try to respond to some of the best ones in the next one in video form. Alright, so let's go ahead and jump into the first comment of today. It's from Mary. Mary says, I was claimed as a dependent on my daughter's income tax. Will I receive a check? All right, thank you so much for that comment, Mary. And unfortunately, as far as the first stimulus checks go, dependents are not eligible for stimulus payments, so you will not be receiving a $1,200 stimulus payment. Now, as far as the second stimulus check goes, the next stimulus package has not yet passed. The Democrats in the HEROES Act did include $1,200 stimulus payouts to dependents. So if that bill passed, which is probably not, then you would receive another payment. I'm not sure in the next stimulus bill if it's going to include payouts to dependents as well. It may be something like the CARES Act where people under the age of 17 were eligible for additional $500 stimulus payments, but I'm not sure if all dependents are going to be eligible for stimulus payments. So we'll just have to wait and see. All right, so the next comment today is from Tommy. Tommy says, my son is 20 and has been on SSDI since he was 5 years old. I'm his payee. I have tried every possibility and haven't had any luck. The only thing is the IRS has emailed me saying that the bank account is not valid. He's had the same account for years. I'm truly confused. All right, Tommy, thank you so much for that comment. So the best suggestion I have for you is to check the payment portal and see what that status says. If it says payment status not available, that just means that he has not yet been scheduled a delivery date. The only other question I would have for you is whether or not your son is being claimed as a dependent, as if he is being claimed as a dependent, that would prevent him from receiving a stimulus payment. And also, I have another question about the email saying that the bank account was incorrect. If the bank account linked to your son's account where he's supposed to receive his stimulus payment is invalid, then whenever the IRS goes to send the stimulus payment to that bank, the bank is going to reject the payment just because the account number is invalid, and then they're going to send it back to the IRS. So the IRS is going to have to reprocess the payment, and instead they'll be sending out a check in the mail. So I would be checking your mailbox. Maybe they'll be just sending the check in the mail instead of directly depositing the check. All right, so on that note, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video. If you did enjoy the content in this video and you'd like to see more videos like it, please consider subscribing to my YouTube channel. It is completely free to do so and a great support to my channel. Also, if you would like to receive one free stock valued all the way up to $500 from Robinhood, I will go ahead and link that in the description box below where you can claim that. And even if you do not wish to continue investing afterwards, you can always sell that stock and then withdraw your cash, so it's free money. So I do hope that helps. And with that said, I'll see you guys and I hope you have a great day today.